to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Carey? I see him on Zoom. I'll move on to Chilson.
Present.
Parker?
Here.
Hutchings?
Here.
Ruffridge?
Here.
Hugarte?
Here.
Councilmember Carey?
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 2, approval of agenda and consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Parker. Are there any changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Seeing none, would the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Approval of the August 11th, 2021 council meeting minutes, new business ordinances, ordinance 2021-18, amending Soldotna Municipal Code, Title IV elections, updating absentee by mail and electronic transmission voting procedures, and enacting new provisions to allow voters to correct deficiencies on returned by mail or electronic transmission affidavits. Introduced by the city clerk, public hearing on September 8th. Ordinance 2021-19, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $20,000 in the utility fund for the purchase of hydrant repairs, introduced by the city manager. Public hearing on September 8th, 2021. New business resolutions, Resolution 2021-42, authorizing a 2-year agreement between the City of Soldotna and the Kenai Peninsula Youth Foundation, DBA Kenai River Brown Bears hockey team for the use of Soldotna Regional Sports Complex, introduced by the city manager. And that is your consent agenda.
Are there any public comments on any items just read by the clerk? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Seeing no one here in the chambers wishing to speak, and seeing no hands raised on Zoom, we will move on to no one else wishing to speak. The approval of the agenda and consent agenda is back before the council. Are there any council objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing none, or hearing none, the agenda and consent agenda are approved. And moving on to item 4 on the agenda, public comments and presentations. Items other than those appearing on the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker, 20 minutes aggregate. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Seeing no one in the chambers wishing to speak on it, and seeing no hands raised, we will close the public comments and presentations. Next item on the agenda is Assembly and Legislative Report. Are there any representatives of the borough, the state, and in attendance who would like to speak? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Seeing no one in the chambers and no hands raised, we'll move on to next item, item 6, public hearings. Ordinance 2021-017, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $1,139,130 in COVID-19 relief special revenue fund for grant received from the State of Alaska Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development as part of the American Rescue Plan, ARPA of 2021, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact?
I'll move to enact ordinance 2021-017.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson.
Second.
May I have a second?
Second.
That was
Second.
Councilman Carey.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carey.
You're most welcome.
I got to get used to using Zoom again and looking at the screen. Report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. This ordinance would appropriate new federal funds, COVID relief funds that are provided to the city as part of the American Rescue Plan Act. The city has already actually received the first tranche of these funds, but this ordinance would appropriate the full amount of funds that are allocated to us, which is $1,139,130. And those funds are eligible to be used on expenses through the end of 2024. So we have quite a bit of time to be able to use these funds. We have not yet come forward with a recommendation, and the council hasn't yet provided input on what those funds can be used for. But at some point, we would recommend that we get together and talk about priorities for the use of those funds. I provided a one-page kind of front-back handout as a laydown that talks a little bit more about this tranche of coronavirus state and local recovery funds. And generally, it can be used for expenses similar to what the CARES Act funds could be used for, with some additional flexibility for things like water sewer infrastructure, broadband, and in some cases, local government revenue recovery. So at this point, we're just recommending that the funds be appropriated so that they're within our accounts, and then we would come forward at a later date with the council to determine priorities for spending. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Seeing no one in the chambers wishing to speak on it, and no hands raised on Zoom, the item is back before the council. Are there any council comments? Ms. Hutchings.
I would like to know if this funding can be used towards our 911 issue.
Councilwoman Hutchings, through the mayor, our estimation is that these funds can be used for a broad variety of municipal expenses, because we have calculated based on the formula that they use for revenue replacement, and we will be eligible to use this full amount as revenue replacement. And what that means is that we can use it on municipal projects, operational expenses. We're going to have wide flexibility in how we use those funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Mr. Chilson.
If you don't mind bearing with me, I apologize. I have a small list of questions here. I know that we had previously approved the Shop Local program for this holiday season again. Are the funds to support that previously encumbered out of our prior federal aid, or would that be coming out of this latest batch?
Councilmember Chilson, through the mayor, we have earmarked funds through the CARES Act for that program.
Okay.
So I think we had identified $350,000 for the second Shop Local program. That would be out of the previous federal funds that the city had received. It would not need to come out of this batch of funding.
Got it. And then my second question being, I saw in your memo that we actually have a deadline of through December 2024 to consume these funds. Has there been any consideration of setting aside a portion of those to spill over into the next fiscal year in case the pandemic is continuing to be kind of a burden on the community and we don't have any additional federal aid coming in at that time?
Thank you, Councilmember Chilson. Through the mayor, when we appropriate these funds, they will live in a separate project account and they will not lapse at fiscal year. So they will be set aside and available for the council's direction to spend. They will not lapse at the end of FY22, and instead it'll be a separate account that's available for us really through the end of the eligible deadline, which is 2024.
Got it. And then my last one, which is kind of a half comment, half question, is I'd just like to know a little bit more about how you see the development of the spending plan for these unfolding and what the community involvement on that looks like. I know last time we had CARES money coming through, we were able to collaborate with a bunch of key stakeholders in the community to really get some really important feedback on how we can best make those impact the community for the better. So I just wanted to get some more information from you on that.
Thank you. Through the mayor, we have not yet kind of considered process, and we'd be very open to feedback from the mayor and council on how you would want to see that move forward. We're very flexible. At this point, we're still working on closing out the CARES Act funding, so not yet thinking about how to come at that question about prioritizing the ARPA funding. We'd be happy to accommodate input on that process, and as well as input on the level of urgency when the council feels is the right moment to really start that conversation.
Any further questions from the council? Further comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Chilson,
Yes.
Parker? Hutchings?
Yes.
Ruffridge?
Yes.
Hugarte?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes.
The ordinance 2021-017 passes on a 6-0 vote. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is new business, and that would be Resolution 2021-041, reclassifying the utility manager position from a salary range 22 to a range 23 and amending the FY22 authorized staffing table introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Parker. May I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. Report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. The council establishes pay ranges typically through the operating budget. We've got the approved staffing table contained within our operating budget. And when we see a need to request a change in the middle of a year, it comes forward to you as a reclassification request, as a resolution. We have been advertising the vacancy for the utility manager position for several months. That's a department head level position that reports directly to me. And Mr. Cornelis and I we've been conducting interviews. I am bringing forward this request to seek reclassification one level from a 23 to a 24. It's typically about a 5% change between ranges on our salary schedule. So it would be an increase of approximately 5% for this position. And I didn't include in my memo, but I will share that based on our interviews, I've made a conditional offer to an applicant. And I believe that if we're able to achieve this salary range, we'll have someone interested and ready to come on board, subject to HR completing their vetting process. And I would seek your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Seeing no one in the chambers wishing to speak, and I see no hands raised. The item is back before the council. Are there any council comments? Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I know that this is as the city manager said, this has been a position that we've been trying to fill. I believe that increasing the range is appropriate and fully support it, and hope that we can get someone on board soon.
Any other comments? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Councilmember Parker? Yes. Hutchings?
Yes.
Ruffridge?
Yes.
Hugarte?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Chilson?
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Resolution 2021-041 passed on a 6-0 vote. Moving along to item C, other action memorandum 2021-013, reconfirming the recommended candidate for appointment to the Kenai Peninsula Borough Planning Commission introduced by the mayor. May I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Parker. May I?
I'll second.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. As you know, we have gone through this process now for 3 months, I believe. The borough advertised. They sent us some applicants that they had received. And I believe we do our process, and our process is the proper way to do it. And we only had one applicant, and that was Ms. Hutchings. And that we would be forwarding that on again to the borough, requesting that they make that appointment to the borough mayor and to the borough assembly. And before I pass this along, I will ask the city clerk if Ms. Hutchings should not vote on this.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. She abstained from the original, so yes, she should abstain as well again, since she is the candidate being recommended.
Let's see, where were we at here? Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Seeing no one in the chambers wishing to speak on it, and I see no hands raised. So it's back before the council. Are there any council comments? Vice Mayor Parker?
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I think in the past I've made my position clear. I believe we should abide by Alaska statute and stick with the process that's been outlined both in statute and code, and fully support this action memorandum.
Seeing no further comments, call for the vote.
Councilmember Ruffridge,
Yes.
Hugarte,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Parker. You have 5 yes votes and 1 abstention.
Okay, the action memorandum passed on a 5-0 vote with 1 abstaining. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is 8, mayor and council reports, mayor's reports and proclamations. I would like to congratulate our deputy city clerk, who has received her certified municipal clerk certification, and it's a great honor for her to receive that, and we're very proud of her, and would like to congratulate her again. And I'd like to thank the city staff for their words of comfort in this trying times. And thank you to City Council for your support. I've asked the city manager to look into the city taking on the platting duties from the borough and doing it in-house instead of having the borough do it, and they are looking into that right now. And I was pleased to see when I drove through town yesterday about 4 o'clock that there was a line formed there at the vaccination clinic for probably half a dozen people standing in line waiting to get vaccinated. So we'll move on to the next item there, and that will be council reports on boards and commissions. The Soldotna Chamber of Commerce Board meeting. Mr. Chilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report will be fairly brief tonight. The Soldotna Chamber of Commerce held our most recent board meeting on August 13th. This was just 2 days after their quarterly report to the council. So the only items worth note that came out of that meeting that were not previously presented to the council would be, what are my notes on this? The chamber had previously established an incentive program through a grant that was offered through the State Chamber of Commerce that allowed them to give gift cards to those that were getting vaccinated. That was a pretty significant success in our community. And based off of that, the State Chamber has offered to extend an additional $10,000 to the local chamber to continue that program. So the way that's going to work is through this program, you get vaccinated, you get a $25 gift card. They were able to give out all of those last time, and I believe that was $25,000. I could be wrong on that amount, but it was a pretty significant amount of gift cards they gave out in the community, as well as other incentives, including the raffles they did at the Soldotna Park earlier this summer. Additionally, the Levitt AMP grant has again been confirmed for next year. We're going to be able to continue that program. And lastly, the local Kenai Young Professionals program, which was previously housed under the Kenai Chamber of Commerce, is being reformed as the Central Peninsula Young Professionals, and it's going to be jointly administered between the Soldotna Chamber of Commerce and the Kenai Chamber of Commerce. And I'm really excited to see that program going forward and growing and expanding to include a collaboration between both cities. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any questions for Mr. Chilson?
Yes.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you. So you said the Levitt grant has been extended another year. They're not going to go through a competitive process like we've done in the past?
Correct. The Levitt AMP Foundation has been able to extend that offer and waive the voting process for our city to where that grant is secured for us for next year.
Congratulations.
Yes, the chamber has done amazing work on coordinating and advocating for us on that.
And then the $10,000 that the chamber received for vaccine initiatives, is that something that they're distributing to the different places that are providing vaccines?
You know, I'm not quite clear on how that's being distributed. I just know that you get the vaccine, you get a gift card. I imagine there's some kind of partnership with the actual clinics on that. Perhaps Councilman Ruffridge is in the middle on that and might be able to expand.
Councilmember Ruffridge, can you provide any additional insights?
I don't really have anything additional. No.
Well, I would be happy to get the answer for you and follow up as soon as I can.
Ms. Queen?
Thank you. To answer part of that question, I know we have been coordinating to have those $25 restaurant gift cards available at the walk-in clinic at the Y. So they were very popular there. If anyone went to that free clinic at the Y, you'd be able to choose from any of the restaurants they had available. I believe Kenai Public Health is also been distributing them on Wednesdays at the park, but as those events may not be moving forward, as we're wrapping up the summer, we'll gather all that information and be sure to share it. But I know one of the primary locations they were distributed was at the clinic at the Y, and they were, when I was speaking to the folks administering vaccines there, they shared as well that that was a very important incentive. People really appreciated having that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we will move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. Several months ago, when we were kind of outlining our exit strategy for the CARES Act funding, we generally described where we were at, but I promised that we were planning on a document that would be more thorough in describing the different programs that the city administered, and happy to include that in the packet. Laura Reiner put this document together with input from Mr. Zarneski and myself, and as well as our finance director, Melanie Imholt. And we're really proud to be able to share this with the public. I intend to send it to our elected representatives, both at the federal level, the state and the borough, just as a way to say thank you, and here's what we did with those funds. We included on the back page a thank you page where we named names. That's always dangerous to do, but we felt it was important to be able to identify the organizations and the individuals who were very impactful in all of these programs. If you find that we inadvertently didn't address someone, let us know and we'll be happy to update that so that we can make sure that we can recognize everyone who had a hand in that. Two other meetings I just want to note. On the 17th of August, Mr. Zarneski and I had a Zoom conference with Tim Dillon from the Economic Development District and Shirley Kelly from the Economic Development Administration. That's the federal arm of the government that provides economic development funding. And we were discussing our draft of the downtown riverfront redevelopment planning project. We've been meeting with KPED and the EDA since March of this year, and we have been moving forward in development of that application for federal funds to take next steps with the planning and design of that downtown project. They gave us very good specific feedback, and we now have identified a pot of funding program that we'll be seeking these funds through. It's part of the ARPA program, and our intent is to have that application finalized and back to the EDA within the next few weeks. So we'll share that application with the council. The program likes to have a 20% local match, but the city of Soldotna has already appropriated funds for this exact purpose, and we'll be able to use those previously appropriated funds as part of our matching requirements. So we're excited to work on that project. We'll keep you in the loop as we move forward. They review a lot of applications. The review committee, which is regional in the United States, is meeting once a week. They'll be reviewing hundreds of applications, but we really appreciate the support and feedback we've gotten from KPED and the EDA so far to make it this far. So excited to be able to send that to you when it's finalized. The other meeting I'll report on the 18th of August, we had a board meeting of the Alaska Remote Seller Sales Tax Commission. That's the statewide intergovernmental board that we sit on as a member and that I participate on as a board member to administer the internet sales tax statewide. We approved a few kind of really technical interpretations of the code and process. There will be one matter that may come back in front of the borough, potentially for a code revision. And that has to do with determining the sourcing of where a service is taxed, whether it's taxed where the physical location where the work is performed or where a work product is delivered to the person who's purchasing it. So we'll work closely with the borough, but that was one of the items that was discussed at our meeting that may have implications for local municipalities on the ground with their brick and mortar code. So I'll keep you up to speed on if there's any changes brought forward for the borough's consideration. The other thing we talked about is potentially having the board act as kind of an appeal body, so that if a member municipality, in working with the AML staff through the administration of this sales tax code, wasn't able to come to agreement or reconcile what they perceived as a difference of opinions of administering this program, they would be able to come to the board and we would act kind of in an adjudicating fashion. So we talked about that at the board meeting. And I think that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the council? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comments. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment. Is there anyone who wishes to comment, from the public who wishes to comment? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Seeing no one in the chambers wishing to speak, and seeing no hands raised, we'll go back to the agenda and move on to item 11, council comments. Mr. Ruffridge. Mr. Ruffridge.
I have no comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the efficiency shown in tonight's meeting, both staff as well as council. And Mr. Mayor, I just mentioned that your email to us, for me, was very impactful. God bless you. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Parker. Ms. Hutchings. Mr. Hugarte. Mr. Chilson.
Just 2 comments. I'll try to be quick tonight. Firstly, just kind of looking through the CARES recap report that we presented on tonight, I just wanted to say thank you to all of our city staff that helped made all of those programs possible this last year. There's a tremendous amount of effort that went out there into making these able to benefit the community in the way they were. And I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to see similar impacts resulting from our ARPA funding that's coming in. And the last comment I just want to make tonight is it's been really difficult to kind of follow in our community and elsewhere in the state over the last couple weeks as our hospitals are literally filling up and seeing the lack of support, if not outright hostility, that our hospital workers and administration are getting. It's really difficult to see how hard they're working and the good that they're doing in the community and the lack of appreciation and like I said, even outright hostility in some situations. And I just wanted to say on the record, they are recognized, they are appreciated, and they're deeply valued in our community, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So,
Thank you, Mr. Gilson. Next item on the agenda is executive session. There is no need for one this evening. We'll move on to next item, meeting announcements. And the September 1st, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting has been canceled. And September the 8th, 2021, a City Council meeting at 6 p.m. here in the chambers. Seeing no other business before us tonight, the meeting is